So welcome everybody. This is our inaugural Meet the Author session. We're launching this in order to enable better access to publications that we generate from the Center for Global Security Research at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. I'm the director of the center, Brad Roberts. It's my pleasure to welcome you. Thank you for your interest in meeting with Ben Bahney today and learning a bit more about his new publication entitled Space Strategy at a Crossroads: Opportunities and Challenges for 21st Century Strategic Competition. This is a collection of essays. Ben served as the editor, and he's a senior fellow at CGSR. Ben, why don't you give the group a bit of a sense of your background and what brought you to this subject?
Sure. Thanks, Brad, and thanks for having me. Really, my background is for the last 10 years, I've been thinking about space security issues at the lab and at the Center for Global Security Research. Really, how I came to this issue is after having worked for 5 years at the RAND Corporation, I came to the lab and really became keenly interested in how space really undergirded U.S. conventional military capabilities, and how the conversation around space was increasingly moving towards this question of how space is transitioning from a sanctuary to a contested area where U.S. Potential adversaries were posing new challenges. So I became keenly interested in this because it really adds a new layer to the U.S. security context and the security environment more broadly. And I wanted to delve into it more deeply.
So this collection of papers arises in part from a workshop that you put together in the winter. Can you give folks a bit of an understanding of the sequence of workshops that we've undertaken at CGSR and sort of conceptually how they move one from the other?
Absolutely. So we started doing these CGSR workshops back in 2016. We really started to think through some of the questions around how space was evolving as part of the broader military kind of strategic context. So our first workshop focused on the question of the third offset strategy, which at the time was very much kind of the centerpiece of how we were going to try to compete more with the challenges from Russia and China. So our first workshop was about what was really the place of space in the third offset strategy. It hadn't been part of that conversation up to that point. And so we really wanted to draw in space issues to the broader strategy of the third offset and think through how the U.S. community could leverage things like commercial space, could leverage the capabilities of allies and partners. After that, we really started to think through, as opposed to thinking about the role of war in space, so what does space warfighting look like? We really wanted to start thinking through what was the role of space in war. So how does space strategy really factor into broader security strategy? And so really actually the last couple of conferences used that framing more squarely. So it's thinking about, how do we think about what space brings to the broader security environment? What are the unique challenges of space with regards to conventional all the way up to strategic competition and conflict? And to do that, we brought together a host of different experts from the U.S. Defense Department, state, the interagency, foreign partners of various kinds, NATO players from the NATO staff, and really we tried to think through some of these issues more holistically, thinking about issues of extended deterrence, strategic context, and even conventional. So really this whole series of workshops has been trying to build out kind of a broader sense of how does space fit into the broader strategic context.
So what makes this new monograph timely and interesting to folks?
Well, with the creation of the Space Force just in the last year, I think the role of space in military competition is very much front and center in people's minds now. Space and military issues has bled into popular culture with the recent Netflix show. So this is really become part of the broader national conversation. So I think it's timely because Space Force is now newly created. There's a force level construct to train and equip U.S. military forces in space. The stand-up of U.S. Space Command is also a major major milestone in that now there is an operational geographic combatant command, not just a functional, but a geographic combatant command around space. So the military, the U.S. military in particular, is really thinking about these questions of what does it mean to really have to fight through space, defend our space assets while prosecuting a traditional military conflict against a near-peer adversary. And so as a result, there's a lot of open questions right now that I think a broader set of thinkers should be contributing to.
So you've got a broader group of thinkers here. Tell us a little bit about who else contributed.
Our team of contributors included John Hill, who is the Deputy Director for Space Policy at the Pentagon, Pete Hayes, who's a professor at George Washington and who also has worked with the Defense Department, Matt Daniels, who formerly was working at the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, as well as the Office of Net Assessment at the Pentagon. We had collaborators from CGSR. So we had Powell Alonso, who is a RAND PhD student and a postdoc at CGSR. We also had Benjamin Silverstein, who at the time was a research associate at CGSR, and then myself and Jonathan Pearl, who are both senior fellows at the center. We also had Ben Bahney, who's a professor from the UK, who was specifically writing about UK defense policy and the role of space therein. So the team, I think, was pretty diverse. It had a lot of U.S. voices. We had European voices, both in Powell and Bled and Bowen. We had people that with insight from inside from the Department of Defense as well as outside. So I think we really got a good mix of people who are, really, I think, intimately familiar with space strategy issues, but coming at it from a variety of different perspectives and directions. And that's really what we were going for in this monograph.
So accordingly, one reviewer called it a feast, a tribute, a diverse collection of interesting, thoughtful essays. Could you offer a broader perspective on the state of development of U.S. military thought about space strategy? How are we doing coming to terms down the journey that you've been on, the journey that CGSR has been on, but the journey the nation's on? Are we getting our thinking together? Are we close to getting our thinking together? Give us a little bit of a sense of the journey.
Sure. I think I would say that we're getting our thinking together still. Given the way that the conversation around space and space strategy has evolved, we've I think collectively decided as a nation that we're going to move forward with trying to defend our military space assets in a meaningful way. The question now is, how broad is that set of concepts? What does that mean for the rest of the U.S. military's acquisition programs, their ability to prosecute what they want to do in other domains? There's still a lot of open questions, I think, and I think you can see in the media that the U.S. Defense Department is still very much trying to figure out what a lot of these answers are. So I think there's still a lot of open questions, and really I think this monograph was meant to really lay down a marker, essentially trying to put down some signposts on where are problem areas, where areas where there's some clear opportunities, really to kind of map that space out and set a tone for the broader conversation. So just a little bit of flavor on that is, really broad questions around what's the span of competition in space? How wide of a competition are we talking about? Is this really just kind of a military competition in space surrounding the ability to do things on Earth? Or are we also talking about competition in space for control of resources in outer space, like on the moon? And this has been a centerpiece of some of the Trump administration's thinking. And we've got some good commentary on that from different perspectives in the monograph. There's other questions about, what is the role of the Space Force? What is its primary function? These are things that really haven't been really solidly decided upon and spoken about by the Defense Department and by our political leadership. So we've got some good perspectives in the monograph on those issues as well, ranging from, should we have a Space Force that's meant to guard commercial interests, or should we have a Space Force that's really meant to protect U.S. military's ability to do what it needs to do? And so there's a real tension in the national conversation around those issues as well.
Great, thanks, Ben. This was intended to be a short introduction for our listeners and watchers. Let me ask if there's anything you'd like to say in closing.
I just think it's been a real pleasure to be a part of this project, bringing this monograph together as an outgrowth of our space workshop series. So I just want to thank you, Brad, and I want to thank the center for giving us the opportunity to pull together our thinking in a published format like this, and to talk to people about it like this on the internet. So I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity. Would you like to hold up the monograph?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we could edit this in.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. You'll find the monograph available for downloading at our website. We look forward to welcoming you back on another occasion.